The town of Black Hollow was the kind of place people forgot about. A quiet, crumbling dot on the map, surrounded by dense woods and shrouded in mist. It was the kind of place where time seemed to stand still, and secrets lingered in the air like the scent of damp earth. At the edge of town, where the forest crept close, stood an old Victorian house. Its once grand facade was now weathered and worn, its windows dark and lifeless. The locals called it the widow's lament, and they avoided it like the plague. But Emma and Mark didn't know that. Not yet. They were city people, tired of the noise, the crowds, the endless grind. When they saw the house online, its sprawling garden, its intricate woodwork, its stained glass windows, they fell in love. The price was unbelievably low, and the real estate agent was eager to sell. Too eager, perhaps, but Emma and Mark were too caught up in their dream to notice the way her smile didn't reach her eyes, or the way she hurried them through the paperwork. The first night in the house was peaceful. Emma stood in the kitchen, unpacking boxes, while Mark lit a fire in the hearth. The air was crisp, and the silence was a welcome change from the constant hum of the city. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows stretched long across the floor, Emma felt it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. It was so soft she thought she might have imagined it. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling as she turned to Mark. He looked up from the fire, his brow furrowed. "Hear what?" "Nothing, I guess," she said, forcing a laugh. But the sound lingered in her mind, like a splinter she couldn't quite remove. The whispers grew louder over the next few days. They came from the walls, soft and insistent, like voices pleading from another world. Emma swore she heard her name being called when no one was around. She would turn, her heart pounding, only to find an empty room. Mark began waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced someone was standing at the foot of their bed. But when he turned on the light, there was nothing there. "Maybe it's just the house settling," Mark said one morning, trying to reassure her. But his voice lacked conviction, and his hands shook as he poured his coffee. Emma nodded, but she didn't believe him. She could feel the house around her, alive in a way that made her skin crawl. It was as if the walls were watching, waiting. She tried to ignore it, throwing herself into unpacking and decorating. But the whispers followed her everywhere. They were faint at first, like the rustle of leaves, but they grew louder, more insistent. And then one night, she heard it clearly. Her name. "Emma!" She froze, her blood turning to ice. The voice was soft, almost tender, but it sent a shiver down her spine. She turned to Mark, who was asleep beside her, and shook him awake. "Mark, did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He blinked, groggy and confused. "Hear what?" "Someone just said my name." Mark sat up, rubbing his eyes. "It was probably a dream, Em. Go back to sleep." But Emma couldn't sleep. She lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. And then it came again, a whisper, so close it felt like it was right beside her ear. "Listen." The next day, Emma found the door. It was in the basement, hidden behind a crumbling wall. The air around it was icy, and the whispers seemed to emanate from within, louder and more urgent than ever. "Mark, come here," she called, her voice echoing in the damp, musty space. He hurried down the stairs, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "What is it?" "Look," she said, pointing to the door. "There's something behind here." Mark's face paled. "We should leave it alone. This house, it's not right." But Emma was drawn to the mystery, her curiosity outweighing her fear. She grabbed the flashlight and stepped inside, the beam of light revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Emma, don't!" Mark's voice was desperate, but she was already moving, her footsteps echoing in the cramped space. The staircase led to a small, damp room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, etched into the stone with a frantic, almost manic hand. In the center of the room stood an old, rusted cradle, its bars twisted and broken. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices screaming in her mind. "Emma, we need to go!" Mark's voice was distant, muffled by the noise. But she couldn't move. The shadows on the walls began to shift, twisting and writhing like living things. They reached out for her, their forms indistinct but undeniably malevolent. She dropped the flashlight, and in the flickering light, she saw them. Faces, twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams.